Hi, everyone, and welcome. Good morning, and thank you for being here today. I'm Carrie Steele, President of the Board of Commissioners at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. I'm pleased to welcome you to our 8th annual Sustainability Summit. The pandemic may have prevented us from meeting in person, but we have some fantastic speakers here today who are ready to virtually share their experiences, expertise, and enthusiasm regarding our EQ biosolid compost and the value of green infrastructure. After hearing the presentations, I hope you have a better understanding of MWRD's resource recovery efforts and why sustainable resources like green infrastructure, EQ biosolids, and EQ compost are so effective in helping to mitigate flooding while protecting the environment from the harmful effects of nutrient overload in the waterways. Using sustainable resources can also help reduce your carbon footprint. So without any further delay, I would like to start the program by first introducing my colleagues on the MWRD Board of Commissioners. I'm President Carrie K. Steele. We have Vice President Barbara McGowan, Chairman of Finance Frank Avila, Commissioners Cameron Davis, Kimberly Neely Dubuclay, Marcelino Garcia, Josina Morita, Deborah Shore, and Mariana Spiropoulos. I would also like to welcome our Executive Director, Brian Perkovich. And to our honorees, their families and friends joining us today, welcome. We're looking forward to honoring you later during the awards presentation. Our Sustainability Summit offers an opportunity for community leaders, elected officials, public administrators, land managers, educators, and the general public to learn about sustainable resources available from the MWRD and other organizations. I think it's safe to say that we all share a common value to protect the waterways and the environment. By working together, we can reduce our carbon footprint and ensure a better world for future generations. We have a wonderful array of speakers today, and in addition to answering questions in the chat, they will also take questions after each presentation. So to kick off our presentations, we have two of our MWRD staff, Dr. Wong Long Tian and Dr. Teresa Johnston, who will discuss the use of biosolids and compost for landscape management and vegetation maintenance. Dr. Tian is a principal environmental scientist in our Environmental Monitoring and Research Division. He leads the biosolid utilization and soil science section for providing technical support to MWRD's biosolid utilization program and green infrastructure initiative. He also manages regulatory biosolids, groundwater monitoring, and agricultural nutrient loss reduction research at the MWRD's Fulton County property. Dr. Johnston is a senior soil scientist, and her research focus is the application of biosolids and restoration of native soils using biosolids. She is interested in adding carbon to our soil to mitigate climate change and the impacts of contaminants upon humans and the ecosystem health. Welcome, Dr. T. Young and Dr. Johnston.
Thank you, President Steele, for the kind introduction to Teresa and myself. And now we turn to the topic of biosolids and composted biosolids. And today, Teresa and I will give you kind of how we can utilize this resource at MWRD for your landscaping management and for your vegetation maintenance. At MWRD, every day we treat billions gallons of wastewater coming into our treatment plant. And after treating the wastewater, we produce a lot of biosolids. For example, for 2019, we produce 135,000 dry down biosolids. This is just only like a mud or sand. It's a resource because it contains carbon. Yeah, there's the 40,000 ton of carbon for last year in the biosolid. There's a lot of nitrogen, 6,000 ton, and there's a phosphorus, 3,000 ton. So this resource can be as a capital for community to use to save our costs in landscaping, and also we can contribute to our environmental sustainability. So currently the state is, and also the regions is doing the nutrient reduction in the watershed. Everywhere then we're facing a kind of situation is too much nutrients in our local water and also in the hypoxia that's down the states. So if we recycle the nutrients from wastewater in biosolids and we can properly utilize through the biosolid net applications, and we can contribute to the regions and the nutrient reduction in the hypoxia and also help improve the water quality in our local ponds. There's a lot of benefit from use of biosolids. Soil health, plant health, carbon sequestration, reduce the need for fertilizer. There's many things. I just put a short list here. So Teresa will go through with you with more benefits, and also will work with you. How can you go through kind of project, the activities to utilize the resource to help you in the landscaping and plant management. Before I turn this one to Teresa, I will give a brief introduction of her to you because she is now responsible for all the biosolid outreach and the research for the section. So Teresa has been the senior environmental soil scientist at the section. Before that, she obtained a PhD degree in environmental science at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and with research conducted at Army Corps of Engineering. After her PhDs, she conducted postdoctoral scientific research at the McGill University, Canada. She also continued her research as postdoctoral scientist at the US EPA. Prior to joining the MWRD, she was a faculty at the Loyola University, Chicago. Now I turn the floor to Teresa.
Thank you, Guanglong, and thank you for joining us this morning so I can tell you a little bit about our exceptional quality biosolids and how you can utilize them in your landscaping. So EQ biosolids come in two different forms from the MWRD. The first is air-dried biosolids. These are wet materials that are then lagoon aged for about 1.5 years until they reach a specific dry condition that reduces the amount of pathogens in the material. And this is a US EPA approved process to further reduce pathogens. Once the material reaches that dry state and is essentially pathogen free, it is ready for distribution. We also offer exceptional quality or EQ compost. EQ compost is made from dewatered biosolids and wood chips at a 1:3 ratio. The wood chips are locally sourced from the local Chicago area. These are made by actively composting the materials together for 21 days at 55 degrees, and then they are cured for 4 months before they can be distributed. Prior to distribution, they must meet all of the same quality control tests to make sure that they are essentially pathogen-free and meet the standards for EQ compost. The final product is screened so that the material is a consistent size before shipping. A basic chemical analysis of our compost material shows that it's neutral to slightly acidic, and it contains many of the essential elements for plant growth, including both macro and micronutrients. So how do biosolids benefit our landscaping and environment? Well, based on a study done by The Ohio State University in the Lake Calumet cluster sites, which is in the southeastern area of Chicago, they found that using biosolids compared to other soil amendments There was improved microbial community functioning, which is a feature of ecosystem health, improved soil quality overall, and improved earthworm abundance, which is another ecosystem function. These all add up to increased plant growth, reduced runoff, better water quality, potential temperature moderation at that local level, and overall healthier environment for both the ecosystem and human health. So besides those local uses, why are biosolids use in landscaping sustainable? Well, looking at the carbon footprint of landfill for biosolids disposal versus urban use, we can see that the carbon dioxide equivalent is much higher in landfill disposal. So this is releasing many greenhouse gases. So rather than releasing greenhouse gases, if we look at urban use, that carbon is actually sequestered into the soil. So we're not releasing greenhouse gases through urban use, but actually capturing that carbon and reducing greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. And again, if we look at CO2 emissions as a level of sustainability, in an agricultural system, the vegetation returning to the atmosphere as CO2 after crops have been harvested and there's vegetative residue remaining, we see that in unamended soils, it's almost 90% of that material returning to the atmosphere as CO2, whereas in biosolids amended soil, we're below 70% of that material returning. So again, we see this reduction in carbon emissions, which is really an important feature of local use of our biosolids. So how does it benefit actual landscaping projects? On the left side, we have air-dried biosolid typical uses, which include brownfield restoration and our most common use, which is turf grass establishment and maintenance. And on the right, we have EQ compost common uses, which include highway edge revegetation, planting beds, raised garden or indoor plants, and tree establishment. You can see that for all of these uses, essential elements are provided by EQ biosolids. It serves as a soil amendment for all of these, which means that it's adding organic matter, which is improving soil structure, water infiltration, and management. So it not only holds that water better, but also drains the water better, so you have a good balance. It's providing ecosystem habitat as a soil amendment so that whole soil health is much better. It can be used as a mulch in many situations. It serves as a growth media for new establishments. And there have been studies that have shown in turf grass establishment and maintenance, it actually suppresses disease. So what are some of the common uses? Villages and park districts commonly use biosolids to top dress and maintain athletic fields and their open spaces. So in this case, we would see air-dried biosolids be spread as a top dressing in order to improve that turf grass quality. We see compost often used as tree establishment and mulch around those trees and for planting beds, as well as plant cover for medians, roadways, and easements, where there could typically be stormwater runoff that's now prevented due to those plantings. At golf courses, we often see rough putting greens and out of play areas top dressed with biosolids, while garden beds are often established using compost. Construction sites can be converted into nice lush turf grass areas with fast establishment of turf by combining air-dried biosolids with that top clay surface layer, and this can serve as a replacement for that removed topsoil. We have seen rain gardens and native plantings established using our compost material, and this is important for water infiltration, so this green infrastructure can be improved by using these biosolids and managing that stormwater. Finally, we had over 300 residential users this year alone ordering compost and air-dried biosolids, and they've commonly used these materials to top dress their lawns, establish raised beds and vegetable gardens, increase their growth in garden beds, and for tree establishment and care through mulching around their trees. One area that we are trying to increase our use is in brownfield sites. So brownfield sites are areas that are undeveloped because they had formerly been used for an industrial purpose or an unknown purpose, and they are now often an eyesore in an area or a community. And if a municipality has a brownfield site, they can utilize biosolids to restore vegetation and benefit the revitalization of that area. Turf grass maintenance, as I mentioned, is an important part of air-dried biosolids utilization. So here's an example of top dressing at Coyote Run Golf Course. The top of the photo was top dressed with air-dried biosolids, as the bottom of the photo was not. And you can see the difference in that green color. And this is the rough at Coyote Run Golf Course. Another golf course example is at the North Shore Country Club in Glenview. In 1997, over 10 types of soil conditioners were utilized for establishment of the putting green to create that root zone. What they found was biosolids actually performed the best and continued to keep the putting green the brightest color green even after 10 years. Some important uses for EQ compost in landscaping. On the bottom, you can see utilization along a highway roadside. Utilizing compost can help grow vegetation on these areas, which can strengthen that slope so that erosion is decreased along roadways. Another use, if you look at the top of the screen, is creating mixed compost and soil in potting mixes for raised bed gardens and planters. So you can do this by mixing compost and soil at a 1-to-2 ratio, and then planting your vegetation or seeds directly into that material. Going down now to the right, you can create a mulch ring around trees by creating a 2 to 4 foot circle around the base of the tree. This can vary depending on the size of the tree as well. Typically, this ring would be about 3 to 4 inches deep, and you pull that material away from the base of the tree. So rather than creating what looks like a volcano, you have more of a donut shape around that tree so that that material is holding water around the base, but not causing any water to be saturating the trunk of the tree. Finally, we have mulch or use of compost to increase soil benefits in our garden beds. So for a garden bed, you can spread 2 inches for mulch and leave that as a mulch for those plants, or rototill that material into 6 inches of soil. And this will increase the benefits of compost for establishing a new garden bed. To get compost or air-dried biosolids, you can take a couple of different routes. The first is to go to our website, MWRD.org, and go to Services, then select either biosolids or EQ compost, depending on which you're interested in. You could also go directly to MWRD.org/biosolids or MWRD.org/EQ compost. Alternatively, you can contact me directly at johnstont@MWRD.org, and I'm happy to offer services such as site visits or providing suggestions on application rates for your upcoming landscaping projects. Thank you for joining us to learn about landscaping uses for our EQ products.
Thank you, doctors. That was very interesting. It's always great to spread awareness about our EQ biosolid compost that we are, or I know I'm always out bragging about. So thank you for sharing that information. For all of our viewers, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat box and the MWRD staff person will respond. So if you have any questions, go right ahead and please type them in our chat box and we will have one of the MWRD staff respond to your question. All right, I don't think we have any questions at this time. So we'll move right into our next presenter. Our next speaker is MWRD Assistant Civil Engineer Paul Jacobs. Paul works in the Stormwater Management section of the Engineering Department, where he assists with the development and construction of flood control projects throughout Cook County. He is also responsible for inspecting all major flood control dams and reservoirs for the MWRD. He is currently working on his master's degree in public works at the Illinois Institute of Technology, IIT. Illinois will discuss MWRD stormwater management updates. Paul?
Thank you, Madam President. Again, my name is Paul Jacobs. I'm an engineer in the Stormwater Department. I'll be going over the stormwater projects update. Here's an overview of the district's boundaries. In here, we have listed all the locations of the projects that we've completed or we have ongoing. Overall, there's 150 projects that we've completed or are ongoing, along with 25 Space to Grow projects, which are a partnership with the Chicago Public Schools. Our first type of project that we work on are local stormwater partnership opportunities. This used to be referred to as Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 are now referred to as regional projects, whereas Phase 2 we call stormwater partnerships. What these do is municipalities and other groups partner with MWRD to work on stormwater projects that include localized storage, upsizing critical storm sewers and culverts, making pump stations, and establishing drainage ways. The partners will enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the districts. Later this year, we will be accepting applications for that program again, and we will send those out electronically via our websites. This is something we do a call for projects on every single year. Another type of project we work on at the district in stormwater is the green infrastructure projects. Back in 2019, we accepted 20 green infrastructure projects. It cost around $10 million in construction costs and will benefit 1,200 structures and provide a design retention capacity of about 1.4 million gallons. 2020's call for projects recently ended on August 30th, and they're currently reviewing applications. Another type of project we work on in the district is the flood-prone property acquisition program. It's similar to the stormwater partnerships, where we will enter into an intergovernmental agreement with villages. And instead of doing a capital improvements project, we will do property acquisition to try to remove the most number of structures from the floodway. This is also an annual program that does call for projects, and when applications go out, they'll be accepted electronically on our website. We're also doing Green Infrastructure Initiative Green Guides, and it's going to be two different types of guides. One is a green neighborhood guide that's already out. It's going to include step-by-step instructions on how to manage stormwater on residential properties. It's meant for homeowners who want to implement green solutions at their own home. It covers things like rain barrels and rain gardens, permeable pavement, and dry wells. It's available for download at our website. We're also working on a guide for professionals. This will be for consulting firms and for municipal engineers, and it's going to have enhanced green infrastructure details for developers, and it is currently under development. We're hoping that it will be available this year. Another thing we're working on in the Stormwater Department is our master planning initiative. We sent out questionnaires in 2019 to all the communities in our jurisdiction to gather information related to stormwater issues that they were having. As of this date, about half of the municipalities have participated in the survey, but the survey is still open, and we encourage anyone who received it to please follow the link and fill it out for their own community. It will help us identify projects that we can work on in the future. Now I'm going to go over and highlight a couple of projects in different parts of our local communities. This is close-up of the north branch of the Chicago River watershed. It's got a couple of projects that we have ongoing and completed. In the North Branch watershed, we've done the Skokie Green Alleys program. Construction is going to start this year. It's going to be 3 green alleys. Constructed in the village is a green infrastructure project. Recently completed in Lincolnwood is a new storm sewer outfall to the North Shore Avenue. This is going to alleviate basement backups in the area, and the project was recently completed. In the Poplar Creek and Upper Salt Creek watersheds, this is some of the projects we have going on. This is an overview of the area and projects that we've worked on in the past. We anticipate construction next year in Bartlett at the Devon West Bartlett Biosoil and Bike Path Replacement Project. This is also going to include native plantings as well to help alleviate flooding with green infrastructure. Our next watershed is the Little Calumet River watershed. This is an overview of the projects we've completed and have ongoing. We have some big projects in this watershed, one of them being the Midlothian 1 project. This is along Natalie Creek and is going to address overbank flooding by upsizing culverts and widening the channel at several locations to provide a 25-year level of protection for local communities. This project is currently under construction. A project we have under development is called the Robbins 2 project in Robbins, Illinois. It's going to address flooding along Midlothian Creek and Robbins, and it will feature naturalized detention facilities along the creek and a diversion channel to the Cal-Sag channel, channel improvements in the existing creek, and should reduce flood damage for over 92 structures. A green infrastructure project in the area is the Thornton School District 154 Wolcott School Playground Enhancement. This is an example of one of our Space to Grow partnerships where we work with CPS schools to redo the playground areas at a school to provide playground equipment and integrated green infrastructure at the same time. So we'll remove asphalt of the playground surface and we're going to replace them with permeable pavement playgrounds. This is for the Lower Des Plaines watershed. This watershed leaves our jurisdiction and comes off back again. So this is the northern area, and this is a close-up of the southern area. Here we've recently completed work on the Buffalo Creek Reservoir expansion in Buffalo Grove. The project increased the storage volume of the Buffalo Creek Reservoir by 180 acre-feet, and it also did stabilization of the Buffalo Creek tributary A at the discharge point to the reservoir. We also expanded the trail system throughout the walking paths throughout the reservoir and removed them from the 10-year flood event. It's currently substantially complete, and we're working on the vegetation in the area. Another large project we're working on is the Addison Creek Reservoir along with Addison Creek channel improvements. This is providing 600 acre-feet reservoir with a diversion structure, a spillway, a pump station, outfall structure, and numerous channel improvements. It will provide benefits to approximately 2,200 structures, and construction is currently underway and should complete in 2022. So another project we have in the area in Maywood is the IDOT 15 project. It provides flood relief along First Avenue between Roosevelt and Cermak Road. And the main purpose is to provide access for emergency vehicles for the Loyola University Medical Center. It's going to do this by replacing the existing storm sewers and then also adding bioswales and under drains across the street on the Cook County Forest Preserve property. Green infrastructure project that we're also working on in this area is the Village of Maywood Green Alleys program. We'll be partially funding construction of green alleys at 4 locations throughout the Village of Maywood. This is an overview of the Cal-Sag Channel watershed with the projects that we have ongoing or have been completed. Some examples of projects in this area: the Mildvina Ditch Reservoir improvements. This is another upsizing of an existing reservoir. We increased it by 195 acre feet. And this project is substantially complete. Another project we have in this area is the flood control project at Arrowhead Lake. We increased the floodwater storage of Lake Arrowhead by replacing an existing dam and raising the existing bicycle trail on the north and east sides of the lake. This will protect about 70 structures from a 100-year flood event, and it is currently complete, and we are applying for LOMAR. Green infrastructure project in this area will be in the Village of Summit. We're going to do 2 green alleys in the Village of Summit near 60th Place between 73rd and 76th Avenue. This concludes my presentation. My contact information is available right here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paul. That was a great presentation. Once again, that is Paul. He is with our Stormwater Management section. He is an MWRD Assistant Civil Engineer. Thank you, Paul Jacobs. If you have any questions, I just want to remind our audience, please leave your question in the chat box, and one of our staff will respond to your question in the chat box. Now we'll move on to our next presenter. Our next presenter comes to us from the University of Illinois at Chicago, where she works in the Energy Resource Center. Claudia Kalinska, sorry about that, Claudia. Claudia Kalinska will discuss updates to preserving monarch butterflies, the Illinois Monarch Project Initiative. As an outreach specialist, Claudia conducts research of mitigation strategies for pollinators affected by pesticides, mowing practices, and habitat loss. She also investigates the best practices to aid in increasing pollinator lifespan. Welcome, Claudia.
Thank you for the introduction. On behalf of the Illinois Monarch Project, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to join the Sustainability Summit today. Again, my name is Claudia Kuklinska. I'm from the University of Illinois Chicago Energy Resources Center, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Illinois Monarch Project, which is what we act as the statewide coordinator for here at the university. So just to provide some background information on the need for the monarch butterfly and other pollinators, I want to shed some light on the eastern monarch butterfly population, which has declined by more than 80% in the last two decades due to pesticide use, human development, and mowing of milkweed. And in September 2016, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources recognized that there was a need to build coordination and collaboration in Illinois, and they actually held a Monarch Butterfly Summit where there was a survey conducted to find out any existing monarch conservation activities. And that's actually where the Illinois Monarch Project was established, because there was a recognition that there was opportunities to coordinate and also increase capacity for conservation. And then also I included a map to the right, which shows kind of the monarch migration route, and it also shows the importance of Illinois and why it's essential, because the monarch butterflies migrate from Mexico during the summer, and Illinois actually lies directly along the migration flyway of the eastern monarch butterfly population. And in this flyway is where the monarchs use suitable habitat for nectar and they lay their eggs. And then the Midwest Association for Fish Wildlife Agency actually developed a regional goal of 1.3 milkweed stems to add to the United States by 2038. And using that goal, Illinois actually developed their own statewide goal of adding 150 milkweed stems between the year 2014 and 2038. And this is something that I'll be mentioning quite a bit throughout this presentation. So the purpose of the Illinois Monarch Project is to again promote the addition of 150 million milkweed stems and other nectar resources across the landscape. But the Illinois Monarch Project was also established to bring together vast representatives from agriculture, right-to-way, urban, and the natural land sector to address the stressors on monarch butterfly habitat. The Illinois Monarch Action Plan is something that we've been working on since the Illinois Monarch Project was actually established. And we recently released the action plan earlier this year, and we also had an official signing ceremony a few weeks ago, which I'll touch on a little bit later in this presentation. But the Monarch Action Plan is a statewide living document that identifies significant achievements made towards that 150 million milkweed stem goal since the year 2014. And it also includes current and future strategies that can be undertaken to achieve that goal. And maybe most importantly, it also helps inform planning efforts for other Midwestern states and for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. In particular, the Monarch butterfly is going to go through a listing decision in December by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, where the service will decide whether the Monarch butterfly should be listed as threatened or endangered. And the action plan is going to be used as one of those documents or as a resource that will hopefully help better inform the service on the standing of the Monarch butterfly and help better inform their decision. And then something that we're really proud about the action plan is that the audience is meant to be very broad. It's supposed to be able to be picked up by anyone that's interested in reading it. So if you're interested in just learning about the Monarch butterfly as a private or public landowner, you can pick it up. Or maybe if you're a scientist that's interested in the technical details, you should also be able to pick it up and read it. And that's something that we're pretty proud of. So the Illinois Monarch Action Plan is divided into 5 major goals. The 5 goals are divided into strategies and actions that further detail how we will accomplish the goal of 150 million milkweed stems. So the 5 main goals are as follows. The first goal is focused on actually creating an active collaborative of diverse stakeholders to increase cooperation in monarch conservation. Through this active collaboration, we're able to have more of a thoughtful and thorough representation at the table. And it also gives us the ability to adapt to meet to any future needs as more information becomes available about the Monarch butterfly. And then the second goal is actually meant to use the best available science for the Monarch butterfly and their habitat to better inform conservation strategies. Again, since the Monarch Action Plan is a living document, we have to kind of adapt to identifying new research needs and gaps, and it also allows us to create a feedback loop. And then the focus of goal 3 is to communicate the values of the Monarch butterfly habitat through targeted outreach and education, just to inspire Illinoisans to engage in monarch butterfly conservation. And then goal 4 is kind of the meat of the action plan. It's our longest goal and it's our most detailed goal because that's where the strategies and actions are detailed in a way that showcases how we're going to implement or how actions will be implemented to contribute to the statewide goal of 150 million milkweed stems. And in order to increase that acreage, the monarch butterfly habitat is going to have to be restored, enhanced, and maintained. And then goal 5 is focused on an adaptive management strategy where information and data are collected over time and then integrated into actionable strategies to allow for continuous improvement. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the action plan was actually released earlier this year, but we officially kind of implemented it a few weeks ago through an official Illinois Monarch Project Action Plan signing ceremony, where we had the 4 state agency directors from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Agriculture, and the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. The directors came together to officially sign the action plan into action. So that was a really exciting moment for us. And then we decided to conduct virtual state summit events from October through May, and we announced this during the signing ceremony. And the summit events are designed to create awareness, engagement, and alignment across the sectors. And then I also wanted to touch base on our partnership with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. So one of our biggest achievements is in February 2020, we actually received a resolution from the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District to recognize the work of the Illinois Monarch Project and to also recognize the need to enhance and restore monarch butterfly habitat as well as other pollinators. And another thing that we're really excited about is that in a partnership with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, the district actually distributes milkweed seed packets to help, of course, restore monarch butterfly habitat, but milkweed also is able to absorb water as well. So it's a really cool partnership that helps the butterfly and also hopefully helps water management and things like that. And if you're interested in getting involved, there are a few ways that you can. The first one being is you can join the Illinois Monarch Project mailing list just to stay up to date on the virtual state summit events and just any news that you may be interested in. And then you can also enter the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District milkweed seed raffle just to win some free milkweed seeds, which is also good for everybody. And then there are also 5 actions you can take to act now. The first one being planting native milkweed and prairie wildflowers wherever you live or you work. The second one is participating in citizen science efforts and helping us better understand the monarch migration and its annual life cycle. The third one is sharing resources and your passion for monarchs and pollinators with those around you. And the fourth one is also downloading or implementing the Illinois Monarch Action Plan. There's a lot of goals and strategies in the action plan that apply to a lot of people. Again, as I mentioned, it has a really broad audience. And the fifth one is taking the Monarch Pledge. The Monarch Pledge is actually a pledge designed to pledge certain actions. So it varies from planting milkweed to hosting events to telling your friends about the monarch butterfly, and pledging to any action helps the cause. So there are a lot of ways that you can get involved with this if you're interested in the cause. And this is my contact slide in case you're interested in visiting the website or contacting me, or also Iris, who also is the statewide coordinator of the Illinois Monarch Project. And thank you for letting me present to you today.
Thank you, Claudia. That was great. Thank you for sharing your insight and for telling us what we can do to help preserve the monarch butterfly. So thank you for that presentation. I would also like to remind our viewers, if you have any questions that you want to ask that were not answered in the presentations, please just type that question in the chat box and one of the MWRD staff will get back to you with a response. All right, we'll move on to our next presenter. Our next presenters are here to share their experience with using alternative landscaping tools to help manage overgrown vegetation, which aids in stormwater management. I've had the pleasure of seeing firsthand how effective the goats and sheep have been for the MWRD. This type of vegetation control helps to manage our native prairie landscape in an environmentally responsible way. We first tried this alternative at our Lamont plant in 2019 and again in 2020 at our Calumet plant. Here to discuss goats and sheep as a landscaping option, I'm pleased to welcome MWRD Maintenance Manager Aruch Punsapia and Ben Roble from Vegetation Solutions. Aruch began his career at the MWRD in 1998 as an assistant civil engineer at the Cary plant, spending most of his time in the maintenance and operations department. Ben started Vegetation Solutions in 2009. Based in Richland Center, Wisconsin, Ben has 300 goats and sheep in the stable. The animals graze and clear out overgrowth throughout the region, in places like cemeteries and parks, and at the O'Hare Airport, among other locations. Welcome, Aruch and Ben.
Thank you, Madam President, for this opportunity to speak at this summit. My name is Aruch Punsapia. I'm with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. Give you a little background here. The district decided in 2019 to look at alternative landscape management strategies, particularly for areas of landscape that are difficult to manage and difficult to cut. Things such as slopes under trees and under cover and heavy brush and wet soft ground. In addition to the traditional areas, we have many native prairie landscape areas within the district. And these have a contract, and there's rough cutting with gas-powered mowers. We do selective weed control for invasive species with herbicides, and we do controlled burns. So we're looking at an alternative that would be more environmentally friendly and seeing what else was out there. So we reached out to, we started researching other alternatives, and goat grazing was something that came up at the top of our list for a bunch of different benefits. Obviously, first, it's environmentally friendly. No gas-powered equipment is used, no herbicides, it's all natural, and minimal disturbance to the land. We found that goats can get into hard-to-reach areas. They don't care about slopes. They love getting under the trees. They get into dense vegetation. And then a lot of the reviews we saw that you kind of let the goats do their thing. They eat a lot of undesired plants, and they work 24/7. In some areas, they can be cost-effective, particularly areas that are hard to mow, like steep slopes under trees, where it's a lot of man hours and a lot of labor-intensive areas to cut goats there. And everyone loves goats and sheep. I'll introduce Ben Roble. We reached out to his company, Vegetation Solutions, to kind of see how the system works. I'll let Ben speak as to how he got started in goat grazing.
Thanks, Aruch. My name is Ben Roble with Vegetation Solutions. I started this company in 2009 with 2 purchased goats to clear some unwanted vegetation on my parents' property. From there, it has just continued to grow. More and more people are hearing about this and wanting to try alternative methods for vegetation removal. Also, people really like the idea that it's an organic approach to it. It's animal friendly and animals fertilized and stuff, and also people get to see livestock in their properties. Aruch reached out to me 2 years ago, and we kind of had a bunch of emails going back and forth and looking at sites and trying to explain to them how this works and what their responsibilities are and what my responsibilities are. And eventually we came up with a plan to try some animals at the Lamont plant in 2019. Some of their concerns were predators. They had also concerns about weather. Would the animals need shelter? Do they have to have any sort of protections from the elements? And what about the public? What about people and stuff? So we went through all that and convinced them that things would be okay. The animals would do their job as long as the people did their job and stayed away and just let things happen. We'd never had any predator issues. I still have yet to have a predator issue. The animals are trained to stay within their fence, and the wild animals, when they touch the fence, they receive an electric shock. People are concerned. As long as people know about the project and what's going on, just to respect it, you can come and look at the animals, but just don't mess with the fence or the goats or anything. Just sit there quietly and view them and let the animals do what they want to do. As far as the elements go, yes, it gets cold and rainy out there, but these animals are trained and raised in a hardy condition where they don't mind being outside. We do provide a shelter with our livestock trailer. If it's needed, the animals rarely use it, but it's there in case they want to use it.
So yeah, after speaking with Ben at Vegetation Solutions, he answered a lot of our questions. So we figured we'd give it a try. So in 2019, we issued a PO for under $10,000 to kind of pilot this goats for grazing, and we chose the Lamont Water Reclamation Plant. The map to the right there shows kind of the areas, little areas, 1 acre, about 1 acre, and then a little bigger 3 acre lot. We primarily started with the 1.3 acres at the top, and then on the left-hand side there, the 1 acre lot. We chose it because there's both areas of tree and overgrowth, and then also we had an NPL area that we wanted to see how well the goats worked there. The PO allowed us about 4 to 5 weeks of service. The Lamont was great because the goats, even though our concerns with how we keep them in and keeping the public out, all the grazing areas were within the fence line of the Lamont Water Reclamation Plant, so we can lock up the fence for the plant at night. So we controlled access area. It was also an easy water source for us. One of the few things that, as a district, we had to do was provide water for the animals. So we just had to water them every couple days, and Lamont was convenient for that. Some pictures of the goats. I think this is probably the first day that they were there. You can see the trailer. On the picture on the left-hand side, at the bottom right, there's the little controller and the solar cells for the fence. The white that you see, then it's kind of a netting style fence, goes up pretty easily. The goats and the sheep just kind of hang out and graze. I mean, this was typical for their time there. The goats and the sheep just hanging out, eating grass and leaves. So this is a kind of a before and after. This is the 1 acre lot that was just mostly native prairie. It was mostly ragweed, and Ben can speak to it in a minute, but on the left-hand side, you can see how dense it was. And after about 2 weeks on this 1 acre lot, the goats and sheep pretty much ate everything down to just stalks.
So I guess at the Lamont site, we had a site with 12 feet tall giant ragweed. That's a pretty large plant. It took about 4 days for the animals to eat the undergrowth, and then as I was thinking about moving them because they weren't bringing down the ragweed, one of the employees at Lamont said that he was watching pull it down. So we left them in there, and as you can see, that ragweed on the left is 12 feet tall, and after I think it was about a week and a half, it looks like it did on the right, where they pulled down all 12 feet of that plant, and all that's left is stalks. They ate all the leaves off of it. They ate some of the stalks, and now that area, being that it was ragweed, it was bare dirt underneath. That area has been cleaned up of the vegetation, and you can actually get in there and you could seed something down if you wanted to plant other things in there. The seed bed has been prepared, but these are looks of before and after of what you can expect. We find a very green area we fence them into, and by the time we're done, it's going to be very brown, and there'll just be sticks and stems left that the animals will not eat.
2020, we decided we did another PO again. This time we had the animals out at the Calumet Water Reclamation Plant, and also again Vegetative Solutions with our contractor. We did a lot larger area this time. In the map, you'll see it's about a 9 acre area that's in the borders there. We divided it into 2 large 4.5 acre plots for the goats to fence them in each area. Again, similar to Lamont, there was a lot of trees and undergrowth and some NPL areas. With a PO, we had them for about another 4 to 5 weeks this year. The difference is they're on the public side of the fence this time. So our concerns here, there's a lot more wildlife. People spot a lot of deer, and we also see coyotes in this area, and a lot more people passing by, as this is the main entrance road for the plant. So with the Calumet plant being a lot larger than Lamont, there's a lot of people and contractors and cars going in and out. So we wanted to see how the goats did. And again, they were very easy to manage. Some more pictures just of the goats as they were here. You can see in some of the pictures, there's truck deliveries going on in the background. There's utility vehicles and cars. The goats didn't really care. They kind of just went about and did their business. The hill on the top left and the bottom left picture, it was a popular spot if the goats and sheep were out there. People would stop, take pictures, kind of a different site in the city of Chicago at a large water reclamation plant to see livestock on the hill grazing and sitting around. This picture kind of a little different before and after, or actually this was in the middle of it. This is down the middle of that 9 acre parcel, 4.5 acres on one side, 4.5 acres on the other. On the left side, you'll see that it's a lot thinner than the right side. We had done about 2 weeks of grazing on the left, 65 animals on about 4.5 acres. Thinned it out pretty good. On the right, we hadn't started that side yet, and it's pretty thick, and you can kind of see the vegetation. The strip down the center was actually just mowed with a brush cutter.
Yeah, so as you can see on the left-hand side, what the animals have done, this area had a little bit more native prairie in it, and I was speaking with Aruch on our grazing strategy here. You know, we can tailor our system to all sorts of different things. We can graze it very hard. We can graze it kind of lightly. We can graze small areas, large areas. So what we were trying to accomplish here was we're trying to encourage some of the native vegetation to stay and not be eaten. So this area the area on the left could have probably been grazed a little bit longer, but we were trying to leave some of the native species there. There's a bunch of Monarda that the goats weren't eating. So we felt that was better just to move them on to the next patch and let the natives stay. The herd did graze out everything underneath the trees, which was one of the concerns, that the mowers couldn't get in there to mow underneath the trees, and there's a lot of saplings and young brush that was coming up underneath there. So we achieved that goal, and then decided to move them on and encourage some prairie habitat in there. And that's the thing with our fencing and this type of a system. It's highly flexible. We can do steep banks, we can do flat ground, we can do just about anything with this netting. So any spot that you want to fence in is totally something that we can probably do. It's just that we'd like to look at these sites beforehand to make sure that they are suitable for livestock. There's some sites that just might have some debris or something, or vegetation's too tall that we wouldn't be effective on. So we definitely like to look at the sites beforehand to make sure that we're putting them in a spot where they can be very effective.
And I'll say for using goats for our NPL area management, the goats tend to like the big broadleaf, the thistle, the buckthorn that's invasive to the native prairie. That seems to be one of their favorites. And they leave a lot of the native prairie vegetation alone. And it's to try to encourage the growth of the native prairie while we're thinning out all the invasive species. Also, some of the lessons learned, definitely from 2 years of experience, the goats are very low maintenance, pretty much just providing them potable water to drink every other day or so, and then walking the fence line every day to just make sure the fence wasn't taken down by any reason and make sure all the goats were in the enclosure. We had goats come out sometimes, but they pretty much stay by each other. I think they're herd animals, so they don't really go anywhere. We had a lot of great employee buy-in from this project. Everyone loved seeing the goats. No one said they didn't like them. You know, the goats do like their leafy vegetation, active foragers. They like to wander around and eat. It's good PR. We've had residents stop by and kind of just watch the goats without any issues. Minimal disturbance to the soil with these areas. You know, the goats, you can't tell they're there other than the vegetation's gone. And in the future, time will tell. I didn't include one with this slide, but we didn't have a chance this year to use them in Lamont, just due to funding next year. But from the prior, so this year's regrowth in those NPL areas is definitely not as tall or as large as it was in 2019 when we first put them out there. So I think with continued use, it'll be good.
Yeah, overall, I'd say, you know, this is something that I've been doing for a while, and I know it works, but it's the hardest part is convincing other people that it's going to work and that it's okay to bring livestock into the city. And as long as they're managed properly and everybody's on the same page of what their responsibilities are and what we're looking for, and if there's something out of the normal, that to call the next person in command and just make sure everything goes smoothly. Everything went very smoothly. We did have one goat escape, and me and the guys, we couldn't figure out how she got out, but she just hung out on the other side of the fence while the rest of the herd was on the inside. And when I got there, we just put her back in, but we still couldn't figure out how she got out. But anyhow, people love saying this. It's great PR, as Aruch had said. People are removed from livestock and farming activities, and to have it in their backyard and right in the city like that, it definitely draws a lot of good PR to people. And I'd like to thank Aruch for helping with everything and getting the ball rolling, and everything went smoothly, and we had a great time in Chicago.
What's next for the district? So we're going to expand this program in 2021. We're going to do a contract. We'll have multiple herds. We're going to go to several different plants in the north area and the south area. We'll be back at Calumet, Lamont. We're going to be doing some more reservoirs. I think this is a good program. I look forward to seeing this for many years to come. We've had a lot of positive feedback from employees and the few residents that have seen them so far. And I think in general, it's a good program. Thank you for having us at your summit. At this time, we'd like to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Aruch and Ben. Now, once again, I would like to remind our viewers, if you have any questions, you can simply type them in our chat box and someone on our staff will respond to your question. We'll move on to our next speaker. Our final speakers will be discussing fish in the Chicago Area Waterways. Dustin Gallagher is an MWRD Associate Aquatic Biologist, and Dr. Austin Happel is a Research Biologist at the Shedd Aquarium. Dustin manages water quality and biological sampling programs at the MWRD. Dr. Happel's research focuses on how we can better conserve, manage, and restore freshwater aquatic ecosystems to promote thriving and diverse fish communities. Welcome, Dustin and Austin.
Thank you, Madam President, for that introduction. My name is Dustin Gallagher. I'm an aquatic biologist with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, and together with Austin Happel from the Shedd Aquarium, we are going to present our findings from a paper we co-authored together earlier this year. It has to do with the changes in fish assemblage of Chicago's working waterways over 3 decades. But before talking about the fish, let's talk a little bit about the history of the waterways that we were monitoring. The Chicago Area Waterway System, or the CAWS as we call it, used to flow into Lake Michigan. Later, concerns with health and the encroaching untreated wastewater towards the water intake cribs in Lake Michigan caused the concern for the General Assembly, and they decided to reverse the flow of the rivers. By 1900, the flow was reversed and water flowed away from Lake Michigan towards the Mississippi River Basin. Most of Chicago has a combined sewer system, which is dealt with by the Tunnel and Reservoir Plan, or TARP, as we call it. This slide is a basic diagram of how TARP works. Water from sewage and domestic and commercial industrial sources flows towards the treatment plants during regular dry weather, and during wet weather, stormwater and combined sewage also flows towards the sewage treatment plants, and then eventually it flows into the tarp and reservoir system, and when that becomes overwhelmed, it can flow to the waterways. Tarp tunnels follow the course of the rivers they protect and flow to the reservoirs, capturing wastewater and stormwater flows, decreasing the activity of the 370 CSO outflows, providing additional protection for the fish of the cause and improving water quality. Also collecting additional billions of gallons of stormwater and wastewater are the 3 active reservoirs: the Majewski Reservoir, the Stage 1 of the McCook Reservoir, and the Thornton Composite Reservoir. Long-term monitoring of water and fish provide additional information about the improvements in water quality provided by TARP. Now that we've talked about the system a little bit, the map on the right is the sampling area that we did for this study. Fish sampling started in 1974 by a biologist named Sam Dennison. The program was later expanded in 1985 to mimic our water sampling program, and primarily AC electrofishing gear was used through 2000, and from 2000 on, DC electrofishing was used. At all sampling locations, 400-meter sections were sampled on 2 sides of the river where possible. And for this study that we're going to talk about, 9 sites representing 6 waterways are going to be presented. These sites were used because they were the most consistently sampled, thus reducing variation. Also, to reduce variation, the sampling events that occurred between July and September were also used. From here on out, Dr. Austin Happel will present our findings and discussion. Take it away, Austin.
All right, thanks for that overview, Dustin. So I'll work on presenting some of the results of what we were looking at. So as he said, we looked at data on the fish assemblage from 1985 to 2018. So that's sort of what you'll see on the bottom or the x-axis of all these graphs. These 2 graphs here are showing species richness. So what species did we find and how many different species were found in each sort of sampling event for each year. All the colors you see are the different waterways that we were looking at. So if you remember, there's 6 waterways that we focused on, but primarily we'll talk about just general trends. So if we look at the left graph, the native species richness graph, it starts pretty low, somewhere under 5 species being found in 1985 to, by 2018, over 10 species being found, regardless of what waterway you were looking at. So that's a pretty huge increase in species richness, a doubling and in some places a tripling in the number and types of species being found. And I thought it was important to kind of separate out whether these were native species or invasive species. So on the right, you can see changes in invasive species being found throughout the system. And there's not really a trend. All those lines are pretty horizontal. Some of them are in that there's more invasive species in the Little Calumet River and the Sanitary Ship Canal than there are in that bottom line is the Lockport Lock and Dam. So what we can say from something like this is that we're seeing a pretty much exponential increase in the native species that are being found with no change in what invasives are being found in the system. So we're not seeing like new large invasive populations being dumped in here. Another way to look at this data is to just look at the count of individual fish that are found in each sampling event. So this one's presented on a log scale, and again, the left graph being native species and the right graph being invasive species, and a pretty similar trend in that in the native species, the number of individual fish being found has increased quite a bit. On a routine sampling event, they would find less than 50 fish in the late 80s, and now they're finding over 300 individual fish. So that's a pretty huge increase in the native species count, and again, no real trend in the invasive species being throughout the entire time. So let's talk about some actual individual species and some of those changes. These are 3 native fish species that were found throughout the whole data set to various degrees. Gizzard shad represent one of the most numerous species within the system. They're a native planktivore. So having them around speaks highly to kind of the base of the food web and that they eat zooplankton. And so we see an increase initially in their populations throughout the 90s and then sort of a leveling off throughout the 2000s. Whereas for blunt-nosed minnow and golden shiner, there's some differences in the waterways. You might see different colors being higher or lower, but in general, kind of a steady state throughout the 90s and then an increase in the 2000s. So we're seeing higher numbers of these minnow species, hopefully adding more forage for predatory fish in the system. One of the common invasive species is common carp. They can survive almost anything, including waters without oxygen in them for quite a while. This species was introduced back in the 1800s, if not earlier, and so they've been around for quite a while. So it's not surprising to see them throughout the system throughout the entire time frame. But what is sort of interesting is to see all those pink triangles at the bottom of the graph on the right side, suggesting that there's been a loss in the common carp population at the Lockport Lock and Dam, and subsisting of their population elsewhere within the system. And this has been seen throughout the Mississippi River Basin, and that in a lot of locations they're starting to see a decline in common carp. So it'll be interesting to watch and see if we see that in other waterways. Some species we've seen opposite trends in that they've kind of exploded were banded killifish, which are regionally threatened species. So to see their populations expanding or almost exploding in the late 2010s is pretty cool to see, along with yellow bullhead, to see their populations greatly increasing, another native catfish to the area. Of course, sport fish are something we'd love to talk about. It would be great if we could highlight fishing within downtown Chicago or our waterways. So here are some of the increases in common sport fish. Bluegill, green sunfish, and pumpkin seed all represent sort of the panfish communities. People love fishing for them and filleting them and eating them. So seeing big increases speaks highly to how we might be increasing recreational fishing opportunities in the area. And then largemouth bass is the final one on this graph, where we kind of just see a general trend of their subsistence within the area. Rather common predatory sport fish that people like fishing for, so it's always great to see their populations doing well. So let's discuss some of these changes. One thing I noticed throughout looking at these different species and the different richness indices is that we don't really have a big change in the pollution sensitive species. Individual fish species can be lumped into whether they're sensitive or insensitive to pollution, and we don't really see much changes in the species we would think would come back to super clean water based on those sensitivity indices. But I want to point out that the sensitivity indices are usually not consistent with each other. One publication might say that species A is very sensitive, and another study might say species A is insensitive to pollution. And often they're tested with just one stressor in isolation. So maybe just looking at a single species and whether it is sensitive or not isn't a great way to even talk about this. And so instead, I want to point out that seeing that massive increase in species richness should equate to lower stressors in the system. Because if we have more and more species, that means we're allowing fewer and fewer stressors to stress out those species. And each species has its own thing that stresses them out. So having that greater species richness must speak to having greater water quality. And this is even heightened, or maybe you can bold and underline it when these species are native to the area. And we're seeing that increase in native species rather than just a bunch of invasives. We also have some regionality to the data. There was generally higher diversity in the Calumet River area and Little Calumet River. These locations are over near the T.J. O'Brien Lock and Dam system, which means they're also influenced by Lake Calumet and Lake Michigan water coming in through the Calumet River. And so being adjacent to these means there's all sorts of different habitats that maybe aren't available within, say, the Sanitary Ship Canal and the North Shore Channel or down at Lockport Lock and Dam. And so this is sort of highlighting that a higher diversity of fish is seen in areas where there's access to higher diversity of habitats. And so we might start thinking about how we can increase habitat diversity in the area if we want to increase fish diversity even more. And one way we can do that is through enhancing some of these working waterways using some unique or some novel habitat. I don't know, I like the word enhancement because these species tend to respond in ways that aren't related directly to water quality. They'll need some sort of habitat, and being working waterways, we can only do so much without hindering the ability to navigate up and down them. So to highlight something that's being done in Chicago, Urban Rivers is a nonprofit that's been working to build what's been called Chicago's Wild Mile, which is a mile-long floating eco park made of these floating artificial wetlands. The wetlands are planted with native wetland plants. So not only do they look cool and they flower and provide pollinators with habitat and birds can hide in them, but those roots are actually hanging down into the waterway. And so the wetland plants can suck up nutrients, and then their roots can also provide habitat for fish. So fish can hide inside of them, they can spawn on them, they can pick bugs off of the roots. And so these actually offer some aesthetically pleasing habitats to humans, but also some more natural and functional habitats that are out of the way of boats and will still allow boat traffic. And so these might be something that become more common in these urban waterways, is adding some of these novel and functional habitats. And so if you want to go check that out, that's near the North and Clybourne Red Line stop. There's a Whole Foods right there, and you can walk out and look over the edge and see all these floating wetland habitats. And just this year, they put in a dock, so you can actually go down to the water's edge and walk out and see it. And so we're studying these to see how adding these habitats back to the system can help with that fish diversity index. So with that, I look forward to questions that people have, and I'd like to thank the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District for inviting us to talk at this Sustainability Summit. So thanks again.
Thank you, Dustin and Austin. That was very interesting. Once again, I would like to remind our viewers, if you have any questions, any type of question, please type that question in the chat box, and one of our presenters or MWRD staff will get an answer to you. We will now move on to the awards portion of our program. On behalf of the MWRD, I want to first thank all of our applicants for submitting their applications. At this time, we will announce our award winners. The Biosolids Beneficial Reuse Award recognizes the activities and innovations of individuals and organizations that successfully use MWRD biosolids. As Teresa and Wan Long mentioned earlier, biosolids are a safe product of the water treatment process that can be used as a soil amendment to improve soil health. Through field demonstrations and educational outreach, the benefits of biosolids have been demonstrated to be the cost-effective way to improve soils and establish plants. The winner of our prestigious Biosolids Beneficial Reuse Award this year is Julie Roth of the Natural Learners Co-op for her dedicated work in creating a children's garden at Proska Park in Berwyn. With the help of volunteering mothers and children, Julie and her team created an epic garden, revitalizing vegetable garden beds and converting dead zones into a growing native perennial garden using biosolids to improve soil conditions and provide plants a healthy place to grow. This garden demonstrates the bounty that biosolids can bring and facilitates educational opportunities for families and the community. Congratulations, Julie, and the Natural Learners Co-op. We had many impressive applicants in the Sustainable Landscaping category, which honors an organizations and individuals that work to minimize the impact of stormwater. 3 organizations have been selected for the top award in sustainable landscaping. The first recipient is the Sweetwater Foundation. This organization has transformed vacant and abandoned city blocks in the Washington Park, Inglewood neighborhoods through regenerative neighborhood development, providing urban agriculture, community gardens, and green space, which utilize rainwater and reduce urban runoff and stormwater discharge, while uplifting the community through engagement, education, and the arts. And our next recipient is the Village of River Forest Sustainability Commission for their incredible efforts in stormwater management, including advocating and supporting the Des Plaines River floodplain, adding green permeable alleys, streets, and parking lots, distributing rain barrels, native plantings, and community education and engagement. Our final recipient for the top award in the Sustainable Landscaping category is the Village of Orland Park for their prairie restoration, which creates a landscape scale sponge for stormwater and connects prairie fragments within the MWRD. They have also contributed to stormwater infrastructure through the creation of a green roof at the Village Hall. In addition, we also have 3 honorable mentions in the Sustainable Landscaping category. The first one is Sutherland Elementary School Green Team for the creation of an outdoor classroom that has converted traditional turf grass and landscaping into a dedicated garden, including a rain table. This garden increases student and community engagement in sustainability, and through deeper rooting plants can reduce runoff during rain events. Basically, and the deeper rooting plants can reduce runoff during the rain events. That's awesome. That was the Sutherland Elementary School Green Team. Our second honorable mention is Village of Stickney Mayor Jeff Wallach, who has been committed to improving the landscape of Stickney and increasing tree plantings in the village. His efforts include an Arbor Day celebration at the schools to increase student understanding of the importance of trees and nature. Thank you, Mayor. Our final honorable mention is FC America Grant Ferguson for their conservation efforts and creation of an urban food forest on 4 acres in South Holland. This project, to produce sustainable crops for economically depressed neighborhoods, includes rain gardens, swales, and native plantings to manage stormwater on the property and rainwater harvesting to utilize for the crops. Congratulations to all of our award winners, and thank you for your commitment to protect our communities through long-term environmental stewardship. Jazz hands. Because of your hard work in protecting the waterways and the environment, the Chicago region grows more resilient and vibrant every day. I enjoyed hosting this virtual sustainability summit. This concludes our program, but I thank all of you for listening and for participating in this presentation. Once again, I would like to remind you, if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat box and staff will get back to you with the response, but also put a congratulations in the chat box. I thank you all for being interested in MWRD and being interested in our environment. So I thank you. You will receive an email request to share your feedback via our online survey. Please take a moment to share this experience. If you would like to learn more about the MWRD and our history, we have been hosting monthly virtual tours. Our next tour is set for Wednesday, November the 18th at 2 p.m. That's Wednesday, November the 18th at 2 p.m. Visit our website or social media sites to learn more and register. Our website is www.mwrd.org. Thank you again for spending your morning with us. If you wish to learn more about any of our programs, please give us a call at 312-751-6633. Or once again, you can visit our website. We have an open door policy, so visit our website, mwrd.org, or you can email public.affairs@mwrd.org. We look forward to hearing from you, hopefully seeing you soon. Thank you for joining us.